Long ago, beyond the silver mountains and crystal rivers, there was a hidden forest called Elara. This was no ordinary forest. The trees sparkled under the moonlight, the flowers whispered songs to the stars, and the air shimmered with unseen magic. It was said that at the heart of Elara stood the moon blossom tree, an ancient tree whose silver petals could grant one wish to whoever touched them under the full moon. For centuries, no one dared to enter Elara, for the forest was protected by the fairy queen Seraphina, the most radiant being in all realms. Her wings glowed with the colors of dawn. Her eyes shone like twin stars, and her heart was pure light itself. But one night, darkness crept into the forest. A wicked sorcerer named Malvorn, consumed by envy, sought the power of the moon blossom for himself. Under the cover of a blood-red eclipse, he entered Elara, casting shadows wherever he walked. When he reached the sacred tree, Queen Seraphina appeared before him in a burst of light. She warned him that the power born from greed would turn to dust, but Malvin only laughed and unleashed a storm of dark magic. The forest screamed as trees withered, rivers froze, and the fairies turned to stone. Only Seraphina remained, trapped within a crystal prison of her own magic, unable to save her people. With her final breath of power, she sent out a whisper carried by the wind into the world of humans. A heart pure as spring, brave as dawn, will break the curse of Elara. Far from the forest, in a quiet human village, lived a young girl named Lyra. She was kind and gentle, with a heart that longed for magic and wonder. Every night she would look toward the glowing forest on the horizon and dream of fairies. One evening, as she gathered herbs with her grandmother, a faint sparkle of light fluttered down before her. It was a tiny fairy, weak and wounded, her wings dim. The fairy introduced herself as Nira and begged for help. She told Lyra that their queen was imprisoned and their world was fading into darkness. Without a moment of doubt, Lyra promised to help and asked Nira to guide her to Elara. As Lyra entered the enchanted forest, she felt an eerie chill. The once bright trees were now gray and lifeless. The air was filled with whispers of sorrow. Yet, deep within her heart, Lyra felt no fear. She carried a lantern that glowed softly with her courage, lighting her way through the shadows. Along her journey, she encountered many trials. She crossed the Mirror Lake, where her reflection tried to drag her beneath the water, but she faced it with honesty and courage. She solved the riddle of the ancient stone guardians who tested her wisdom, and she fought bravely against the serpent of shadows that guarded the path to the heart of Elara. Every act of bravery and kindness awakened pieces of the forest. Flowers began to bloom where she walked, and the fairies she freed from enchantment flew beside her, adding their light to her lantern. When Lyra finally reached the center of Elara, she saw the moon blossom tree shrouded in black vines. Before it stood Malvorn, his eyes burning with greed and hatred. He laughed cruelly, telling her she was too late and that soon he would become immortal. But Lyra held her lantern high, its light shining with the hope and love of all the fairies she had saved. Malvorn hurled a wave of darkness toward her, but Lyra ran forward and touched the first silver petal of the moon blossom. A brilliant light burst from the tree, sweeping across the entire forest. The vines crumbled, the curse shattered, and the fairies turned back to life. The crystal prison around Seraphina cracked and broke open, releasing the fairy queen in all her radiant glory. With a single wave of her hand, she summoned a gust of golden wind that swept Malvorn away, his shadowy form dissolving into dust. Queen Seraphina looked at Lyra with love and gratitude. She told her that her courage and purity had restored balance to Elara. She placed a glowing silver pendant shaped like a blossom around Lyra's neck, saying, "Whenever the world forgets magic, this will remind you that it still lives in the kind and the brave." When Lyra returned to her village, the people were astonished to see that the once dark forest now shone like a sea of light. At night, the fairies could be seen dancing in the moonlight once again, and from that day on, whenever Lyra looked toward Elara, she could feel the heartbeat of the forest calling her name, reminding her that even the smallest light can conquer the greatest darkness. And so, the enchanted forest of Elara bloomed once more, forever protected by the memory of a brave young girl.